Mhm. Okay. But they'd be able to hear.
Hello. It'll be like one more second. I'm just getting things finally set up. I appreciate you guys waiting. Cereal. 3 months. Excuse my coughing. Thank you so much. Did you bring snacks? Koala told me beforehand that he was bringing snacks for everybody. So if you don't have snacks, that's Koala's fault. Just direct all that anger towards Koala. Sit tight. Be one little bit more.
There it is, the diner. I guess we're gonna go there. Stop, stop, stop. I don't know how to brake. I wasn't very proud of my driving. Stop. A mace and a stone.
Okay.
Welcome to It's Many Masks, and an artist totally here on their own accord. Starring It's Many Masks, and featuring
Miss Aurelia.
now to It's Many Masks.
Put the Koala, put the mask back on. You put a mask on. Hello. This is the first time I've done this in a while, so it's gonna be a little bit borked. Just a little. Look, it's Lala. It's Miss Aurelia. You can talk now.
Oh, God. That was the hardest not to talk.
Yes, right? Just because you were like, I was like, don't talk until this point. And then is the I'm right here. Oh, where's Matt? He's locked up somewhere. Don't worry about him. Hello. Back with this is my prompt says episode 4, but I think this is episode 7 of an artist totally here on their own accord. I didn't force Lala to be here. She signed a waiver that said that.
No, really didn't have to twist my arm or anything.
Drug you here, tied you to a chair, that kind of thing. That definitely didn't happen with anybody else. But hello. I realized after I set this up that I normally have a camera right there, but this one is my normal one over here. I was like, why does this feel different? But we'll be fine. So Lala here is what would you describe the title as? I don't want to get it wrong.
So my official job title would be I'm a senior level 1 3D environment artist for video games, but we also do hand painted stylized textures. So I'm a bit of 2D and 3D, but mostly predominantly 3D.
Mostly predominantly 3D. Okay. So safe to say environmental artist. Yes. Not necessarily the 3D aspect, but environmental artist.
Correct.
Yes. So in that, I clicked off of my screen. I don't have my prompter. We're going back to your face. I got a bunch of questions. This is an interview show. If this is your first time here, I have artists on, and I grilled them with hard-hitting questions that make them sweat and think about their artistic career. Like if you could bring any historical figure back to life and task them with designing an environment, who would it be, and what do you think they would create? Look, can you see the sweat already?
I don't know if it'd be these type of questions.
Well,
limited knowledge of people.
You're limited.
I'm so good with names. Well, probably I would say Monet, because they're very good with landscape paintings, and I'm assuming they would make water lilies, which we always usually need for our lakes and ponds and stuff.
Is that something that's like a concentration to have like not just open water, like you like?
It depends on where the water is, I guess. If it's like a flowing rapid river, you don't really have much in there besides rocks. Most plants just go boop off the side, so you can't really have that unless they're underwater plants, which we do. But
do?
We do. Yes.
You do underwater
plants?
plants?
Do the water that are under plants.
Loki already has a question for you. Oh? What is the worst song in the Muppets Christmas Carol? Ooh, that's a hard question. That's worst
rude.
Song. No, it'd be like your least favorite song. Loki worded it in an aggressive manner.
It is coincidentally the one that they removed from later versions. Like, it's a good song, but normally I skip the sad song if I'm going through the soundtrack when I'm listening to it.
That makes sense. If it's a happy movie for you, like you wouldn't want to listen to sad stuff. So what inspired you to get into like environmental design, or like was that your initial goal when you went to art school?
Uh, so no, I
Mhm.
was not an environment artist when I went to art school. Like most people in my college, everyone wanted to do character design. That was like the popular one. So I pursued 3D character, um, and spent my 4 years doing 3D character pipeline. Um, and then my final year, I participated in an art contest that my company holds. Um, and I decided to do 2 entries because
Mhm.
I'm an overachiever. And my teachers were like, you can work on this the whole semester and get all your credit for your classes. Done. So I did, I substituted one character class for an environment class. And then I did a character and an environment entry piece and ended up winning environment for this contest and runner up in character. But that landed me an environment internship. And here we are
And there you
today,
are.
almost 7 years later.
I was very tempted because you had found that uh or Limby found like college stuff. I was very tempted
Oh,
to
don't you
pull
dare.
some of those as
Don't.
images. So
No.
here they are. No, I'm kidding. I didn't I didn't
No.
pull any of those.
We don't need to see old Lala art. We don't need to see that.
It was, I think they were good, even if it's one of those hard things with art because you made it and you know where you're at now versus where you're at then. So it
Yes.
was like you can only see the bad things when it's not necessarily bad at all. You just not your current standard.
That's true. That is true. Back then I was like, this is amazing. And now I'm like, wow, this is shit.
I'm the shit. Lala's so humble. So
I
humble.
am humble. I can tell I can say when I was in a very learning stage in my art career.
You were
I
in a
was.
troublesome stage, like you weren't sure what you were gonna do, or like you like
No,
artist block.
I had no digital background going into my art school. I came from full traditional, so
Hmm.
only charcoal and pencil and life drawings. So when I started this college, I had no digital background history. I only had standard, like
Yeah.
paper. So I had a week to learn Photoshop, a week to learn 3ds Max, and really didn't get much help outside of that, and just did it on my own and figured it out.
you you pho- I I've been using Photoshop since like 2000 and probably 2005, and I don't feel I'm good at Photoshop. So to have learned Photoshop that quickly to like a proficient level is insane. The learning curve for Photoshop, if you for those that don't know, is very high. So that was quite the undertaking going from traditional to Photoshop.
I mean, the way I like to look at it is you're always learning more stuff. Like every year, I still learn new stuff because every
Oh
artist
yeah.
I work with brings in stuff that they know. So then they
Hmm.
teach us. So it's still ever growing.
Yeah.
But I remember my first assignment was to upload a picture and make a meme. I didn't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you upload a picture? I
Oh,
was,
to Photoshop, you're saying.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. That was a fun first semester, let me tell you.
Well, what was do you remember the meme that you did?
I don't, but I know I used a pug, but I don't remember what I said.
Like the dog, like a
The
pug
dog.
dog.
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
dog.
Mhm.
But I don't
Hmm.
remember what I said. It was a very long
so
time ago.
so in like learning that, I feel like prior to working professionally in art, like I didn't really have like a grasp of how things should move forward, or like when I was working on a project, it was kind of just like haphazard. Like what kind of workflow do you go through? Like what's your like here's the new project. Like what's your move through that
In terms of school or job.
job? Well, either, I
Um,
mean, yeah, I would say job now because school is a
okay.
whole different
Yeah.
animal.
It depends on the project. So sometimes we'll already get like pre-established ideas for the zone we get assigned to. So usually like I've made an entire plant kit off someone else's concepts.
Hmm.
But if it's like something brand new that they want ideas for, we'll spend about 5 days concepting whatever we
Hmm.
want, and then we pitch it. Then whatever gets approved, we start making in blockout form. So we get it to about 80 to 90% done, so that our level designers can start using them and tell us if there's anything wrong, like if they have issues placing an item, if they need anything adjusted.
Hmm.
And those usually will sit like that for a while. And then we usually polish at the very end stages of things. So it's really just concept to 3D, but it depends on what it is still, because everything's different because we make a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
So a tile set is very different than an asset because tile sets are all flat 2D. You don't use any 3D information, but you have to make it yourself because our game doesn't use normal maps. So every 3D is hand done for
Oh,
flat
okay.
textures. Yeah.
So my my 3D experience is all self-taught, uh self-taught, like struggling through random stuff, and I generally don't output anything that has any color or texture or anything like that. So you were talking about normal maps and
Yes.
just quick overview. It doesn't have to be, because I know, if for those of you that aren't aware, uh Lala was talking about doing like critique kind of things, so people that are interested in like environmental stuff could be like, hey, this is what I'm working on. So this is your initial, like, what is a normal map, what is
Okay.
very
Okay.
top level, it doesn't have to be
I've
super
had
detailed.
lots of practice explaining what I do to people who don't know what
Perfect.
I do.
Perfect.
Um so well, normal maps are different because like I said, we don't use them, but um imagine imagine a uh okay, I should back up. So, say you want to make a tree.
Okay.
Um so obviously the canopy itself will be flat because it's flat leaves. But we don't model out leaves in 3D. That would be very expensive. So we make all those on paper in Photoshop,
Mhm.
and we set their alpha, which is their it's essentially a filter so that anything that's white will be completely visible.
Mhm.
Anything black will be see-through, so that we
Mhm.
can take our leaves and all our canopy shapes, and then essentially make those into cards that we then make
Mhm.
canopies out of. So we can make a bunch of different arrangements that we can then just plop on a tree. But when it comes to the bark, like the trunk itself, that's obviously a 3D model. So to be able to texture that, we have to unwrap it, which
Mhm.
means essentially ripping all its skin off and laying it on a flat piece of paper in
Mhm.
Photoshop, and then you can paint on it, no problem. Um, so with that stuff, like you can do a lot with these layers essentially. Back in the character pipeline, I use more of these maps than I use now in environment.
Mhm.
Um, so like you would have like AO, which is your shadow information that you project a light on your model and then bake it down so that
Mhm.
all the lighting information you can then add to your texture as an opacity layer. So then you can have really easy shadows. The normal maps are all the 3D information. So most like cinematography 3D models, those are fully rendered 3D models. And they
Mhm.
do everything, but we obviously most games don't have the engines to support that.
Yeah, I
So you have
imagine that would
to
be super costly on both
yes,
like processor and space.
yes. I know the art contest piece I had to do had to be under I think 5,000 triangles, which really isn't a whole lot
Oh
for a
no.
character.
I know at
Um,
least that from exporting models, where it just like you have a million plus triangles, is like it's not gonna work. I was like,
correct.
okay, okay.
Correct. You don't turbo smooth in this industry.
Yeah.
Um, So normal maps are essentially how you can fake that 3D information without having to model all of it out.
Because you're
So
because you're using a flat file, so it's way
yes,
quicker, way faster. Upload,
yes,
pulls stuff, has all the information it needs.
yes. So how we used to do it in the character land was we'd take a 3D model to about
Hmm.
midway detail, and then we would save that out so that we can take that one version to super high poly. That's where you do turbo smooth and make all of the super tiny little details, any little bolts, any little like rivets, anything that's on like a gun or weapon,
Hmm.
make all that. And then when then you make another copy from your mid level one that is your, then you can adjust to your low poly one, your under the budget model. So then you can have them side by side and essentially they're the same. And then
Hmm.
essentially you just bake everything from your high one down to your low one and it makes all that 3D information with that normal map.
Okay.
And
That
I, okay.
good.
Nope.
Western
Um,
Princess stories.
uh, I had a texture painting class in school where they taught us how to hand paint normals, which
Hmm.
I never want to do again.
Oh, because it's using that like flat. So you're painting on that flat. So you have to like. So if this was the model that you were using and you were like painting this one section on the front, it's actually like two parts depending on how it's split.
Uh, so what hand painting normals means is you don't have a high poly version to bake down the information. So you have to create it yourself because normal maps are crazy like rainbow color wheel
Hmm.
that are all based on points of light. And depending on where that point
Oh.
is, depends tells the engine if it's a raised or a concave surface. So in making like a rock tile set texture. There's no 3D information for it, at least for school, there wasn't.
Hmm.
So I had to figure out what plane was facing what angle on the sphere of color and paint that on there and do my best. Yeah,
I can see
it's
why you
fun.
didn't. I can see why you didn't like doing that.
No, it's better.
That
It's better when you
sounds.
can just bake it down. The engine does it for you. Hand painting, like it's a good skill to know, so you know how
Hmm.
to clean them up because they're not always perfect.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't have to do that in my job. I haven't done that since school, so it's quite nice.
That's good at least.
Yeah.
Hello, Squid. Hello, Ben. Hello, Advice.
Hi guys.
Hello. If you're this one's another like fun one. If your environments through an epic party, which vert that's not gonna work. Which oh here you go. In if your environments through a party,
Uh-huh.
which virtual characters or assets, because you're not doing characters, it's environment, would be the life of the party, and which ones would be hiding in the corner, shyly sipping their pixelated drinks?
What? Okay. Okay.
Is this a time
Well,
where I also introduced that you're the cave lady of
uh,
your
you
environments? So
can,
it'd be like
yeah.
a cave asset that you have,
A
and
cave
it's
asset. We're throwing a party in a
you're
cave.
throwing a party with the stuff in that environment.
Okay.
Who's the life of the party and who's hiding in the corner?
Yes. I am the cave lady at my job. I've overseen all cave production for our last two expansions. So, uh, at one point I had 30 caves I was overseeing. So, cave lady,
30 caves.
30 caves.
That's a lot of caves.
So if we're having a party in a cave, I think the life of the party would obviously be any plant that glows, any bioluminescent
Hmm.
ones. I've worked on a whole zone where everything glowed, and that was my favorite zone ever because I love to make things glow. Everyone
Just have like
does. I would,
iridescence everywhere.
yes. I had a teacher at my college. She was like, Kate, you can't make everything glow. You're not going to ever get a task that's that. Well, guess what?
Proved
I
you
did.
wrong.
You're wrong. So anything that glows, can have ceiling hanging stuff. So it's like a little disco ball, anything that's just like causes little lights in the room. And then what would be hiding in the corner sipping would
Mm-hmm.
probably be the sad mushrooms that don't really get to glow. They're probably just hanging out with the rocks, like, I'm here. I'm a fun guy, but I'll just hang out in the corner.
I'm a fun guy. This is where I would insert a rim shot if I had a soundboard. The fun guy. I like that
Fun
you
guy.
peppered that in there.
I couldn't resist. It was right there. Just
it
plucked it.
was it was low hanging fruit because mushroom, the top of a mushroom's fruit is what they call the top. How do you
Mhm.
approach balance between realism and artistic inspiration on your environmental designs? Now you have your your projects have a very distinct style.
Yes. Um, so that is actually still difficult for me.
Hmm.
Because especially from my background coming from uh like full like still life. Um,
Hmm.
I used to be able to copy paste what I was seeing with my eyeballs perfectly, which is very hard to switch from when you're trying to add fantasy elements into things. So often my feedback I get is it's too realistic.
Hmm.
So I have to figure out how to like fantasize it more. Um so usually I'll just like look at a lot of real world references, and then like during my like reference gathering stage, my Google searches get very bizarre. But it's really good because then you get a lot of weird stuff that you can like pull shape languages from. Um, but mostly I have my team for that. If I feel like I want to push something, I just ask somebody for
Hmm.
feedback. Usually, if I'm stuck somewhere, feedback is how I get out of it because we're all idea bouncers, so we bounce ideas off each other. So it's really nice to have that. But
That
yeah.
yeah, that is a pleasant work environment where you can be
Hmm.
like, "What if you did this?" and it's met with like, "Oh, that's a good idea," or like, "Oh, like that's interesting way to think about it," versus like adversarial where it's just like, "I'm gonna do my own thing." So I like that your team has the ability to have those conversations, and it's not like, yeah, a fight of any kind, is what it
Yes.
sounds like. Yeah.
I always tell students I talk to, the best way to learn is to give feedback and teach, because then it just kind of solidifies in your brain.
Hmm.
Then you're like, oh, I actually do know what I'm talking about. It did stick in my brain. I know art.
I'm sure, especially like talking about like normal maps, do you find that like you're used to what you do until you start talking to somebody that doesn't know what you do, and then it's like, oh shit, I know a lot of stuff.
Uh, yes. Well, sometimes I forget that I'm talking to somebody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, and I'll just ramble, and I can see their blank stare. I'm like, oh, I lost you somewhere. Let me back up. What do you need
the
explained?
the eyes glaze over, and
Yes.
you can just tell that they're not taking in
Yes.
anything that you're saying anymore.
Correct.
Hmm.
Correct. Um,
Um, with you said you came from traditional art.
yes.
What is the first thing that you remember drawing?
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
ooh.
Or it could be like the first thing you remember somebody saying, like, "Oh wow, you're good at art," because I feel like everyone that illustrates or draws or does anything has had that experience where like somebody random is just like, "That's good," and you're like, "What?"
Um, I know my earliest drawings because my mom found them recently, but I don't remember drawing them, so that's not the
Mm-hmm.
answer to this question. Um, I'm not sure which one was first because they were both around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember drawing a lot of Pokemon for my classmates. Like they would pay me a quarter to draw 'em Pokemon, and I
You
just
you were a paid artist as a child.
yeah. I would just look at I had the guidebook and I would just draw them out of the guidebook. Here you go. There's your Pokemon. I did the same thing with my brother's Ocarina of Time guidebook. I drew a
Mhm.
lot of stuff out of that. I remember I have a whole page that's just King Dodongo or whatever his name is. So a lot of Zelda and Pokemon.
Mm.
Um, and then the you're good at art one. Um, I, that one's hard because I don't
Hmm.
honestly know. I the earliest one I think I can remember is fifth grade when we were doing paper mosaics.
Hmm.
Um, we just had to cut up colored paper into tiny little squares and make a mosaic out of it. And I did a jaguar and won first place within my class. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm good at art.
That would be, yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's that's pretty much solidifies. You're like, oh, I can do this. This is cool.
yeah. So then I just went, I'm like, all right, I'm just keep doing this.
Yeah. Um, if your computer screen suddenly turned into a magic mirror, revealing the true personalities of your 3D creations, what shocking secrets do you think they'd spill?
Depends on which one we're talking to.
All right, which one? So one. Which shocking secrets do you think? Because
Well,
you do cave stuff and you
I
fill it.
do, but I don't know if the caves would have anything to say. I did a lot of weird character stuff in school. I'm sure they have a lot to say. Um, but if I were to pick an environment piece, hmm, I'm going back in my database of stuff real quick in my brain. Uh, um,
Like it could even be like say you have like an asset that you like specifically for a reason, or like what if something that somebody else made as part of like assets that you use that has like something interesting tied to it, like hiding stuff or like anything
um,
like that.
I want to go with my witch trees I made. I
Okay.
feel like they would just be, I don't know what secrets they'd have. Probably whatever they did to get. So let me back up. These witch trees were my first trees I made, but I designed them to look like twisting, tormented bodies in
Okay.
frozen in time. So
I
their
have seen
arms
these.
are their canopies. I feel like they would have a lot of secrets, probably of what the witch was doing when they got cast into these trees, or probably just an eternal screaming if they're just in that pose. Um, Maybe secrets of like what people say as they walk by. I don't know.
Passing on like things that stories they hear as
Hmm.
they go past.
All
Um,
the deer poops they've seen that day.
these deer just keep pissing on
Yeah.
me. In that, what role does storytelling play in your work? Do this the question is, do you incorporate narrative elements into your environments? But
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. um that's something I try to teach when I mentor
Mhm,
new artists coming on. Because a lot of people don't associate, narrative with environment stuff. They're like, it's always about character. They always like it's easy to tell narrative with character. Um, but we can do a lot of it with what we make. So if we're making a plant kit, we can tell, like, if it's a fantasy plant, how it's grown from a tiny little bud all the way up to its um like adult stage, so we can have different elements of
so you
growth.
do like a full story with like even environmental stuff. So you have like
Mm-hmm.
your trees have like a backstory that isn't necessarily like overtly said, but you use to
It's in
create
here.
the yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can tell stories. Most of it is with um I would say the easiest would probably be in caves.
Hmm.
This is one thing I try to teach the most is when you're placing assets, because part of my job with caves is I'll set dress them with all of our environment assets for that zone.
Hmm.
Um, and you can easily tell stories with that. So like, um, if this cave has mushrooms, like how would those naturally grow on the surface of the cave? But if a wind picked up and blew spores in, how far they would go into there, or would there be areas of more clusters versus areas of just like tiny little ones popping up? Um, you can use stuff to frame things narratively. So if there's an area, so I made a giant tree that
Mhm.
people could go inside, and there was a lot of stuff to frame in there. So you can use very bright plants to kind of like frame an archway to grab the player's eye, like, oh, let's go over here. What's over here? Even like seasonal stuff. I've made a lot of trees. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a lot of pine trees, and part of that was making them regular and snowy. So narratively telling how the snow would clump on the branches. So there's a lot. There's
That
a lot
yeah,
you can
and
do.
I feel like it's one of those things that like if you do it extremely well, Koala gave you a golf clap. If you do it extremely well, um it almost becomes part of everything. It's like not that it disappears, but like it just feels right.
Natural.
Natural. Yeah, you don't go, wow, that seems out of place. It just you don't even notice that it shouldn't be there.
Hmm.
Like you notice it, but it's like it just becomes like all encompassing,
Part of the
which
environment.
exactly, which is really cool to hear that you like think about that. I Of course it's to the point where like spores going down into the cave and then being like growing there because of the direction of things like that makes sense that it's environmental stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not something that being just a graphic designer that fucks around in 3D that I would think about, but it totally makes sense when you say it. It's like, oh yeah, of course. Of course that would be part of it.
A part of it, I like to thank this one guest speaker we had my freshman year of my art college who more or less shamed and embarrassed the shit out of me, but it was a learning lesson that I've
Okay.
taken with me. Um,
As I feel like that's a everybody has had some form of that experience in art.
uh, he was looking over one of my pieces I submitted, which was an environment piece I had done for my intro Photoshop class. So it really wasn't the best looking thing, let me tell you, but it was still my homework.
Mhm,
And he was asking me all these questions as to why I made these design choices or elements of my scene.
mhm,
And at that time, I just made them because I wanted to. I thought in my brain this would look cool, but because I didn't have an answer as to the why, like narratively why,
mhm.
uh, got a big lecture on that. And ever since that, I'm like, everything has to have an answer. So if you ask me about anything I've made, there is there's always a why at this point.
when so a why, but you now consciously have a reason versus
Hmm.
like school. I feel like art school taught me how to bullshit really well. So you have an actual reason where like I felt like I would just be like it's because of this and I'm just like making something up off the cuff, but now you go into it with the intent to have a reason behind something that you're doing.
Yes. I do it a lot in my personal art. Every time I make a piece, I try to add something in it that's narrative or funny or silly or ties to the subject or
Mhm.
just tells a little bit of a story. That's why I
Yeah.
play a lot with lighting. I love lighting.
Oh, I was gonna change to the back camera for the piece you did that's on my
Oh,
wall, but I can't switch to that camera in this
that's
view.
okay. That's
Um,
okay.
so I know that to be a fact. Um, if your environmental work had a theme song, what would it what what would it be, and how would it capture the essence of your creative process? This is an intense question to be fun, but what would the theme song be for your environmental stuff?
The first thing that's popped into my brain is the Seven Dwarfs song, the dig 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 dig.
Because you're dealing with caves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like I'm constantly making something. Like I don't get breaks. Once one thing wraps up, you start the next one.
Mhm.
So you're constantly digging and working. But it's fun because
Mhm.
every task is different, so you kind of get plopped around to different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Seven Dwarfs.
Ding,
I
ding,
think
ding,
that's
ding. Squid
dig,
said they had
dig,
a professor like that. It was so huge.
mhm.
For me, I had a student teacher tell me that I shouldn't sign my drawings if I didn't finish them. I kind of like bullshitted through them and then was just like signed it and gave me a bunch of shit for signing it in front of like 3 classes worth of people. And I was just like, I'm gonna remember this.
Sign it whenever you want to fucking sign it. Who cares if it's done or
Well,
not?
now I know that, but back then I was just like, it was a like I need to actually finish and like make sure it's done before I think was his original message. But then like a year and a half later, he messaged me about changing court papers for him, and I was like, nah, dude, that's illegal. Um,
Wait.
yeah. This is a story for another time. How do you stay updated on latest technological advancements and trends in environmental designs? And does this influence your creative process?
Ooh, so that's a that's a question.
Hmm.
I probably don't keep up with them as much as I should. Uh, I mean, there's a bunch of new stuff that's out that could make my pipeline, my workflow probably a lot quicker.
Hmm.
Um, but that would take my time to learn it, first of all. I have made one thing, so I can use like Substance Designer,
Okay.
which is essentially how you make PBR materials that a lot of game studios use now.
Hmm.
Um, you can somewhat pull off the stylized look with it, but you can't get to the full style that my game is. So
Hmm.
no matter what you do in it, you always have to finish it with hand painting in Photoshop. Um, but man, it is a technical hell for me because it's just a spider web of stuff that everything does something different. Everything has like a million sliders for it.
Hmm.
It's just, I've used it once. I got the extra time to use it on one tile set, and I haven't touched it since.
You were like, good on this one, and then this.
Yeah, yeah.
I would s- I would say
Okay.
your introduction of Procreate to your team too.
Yes. Yes. I did have a learn and grow with my team and showed them Procreate because it has honestly replaced Photoshop for me with a lot of stuff right now.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely miss Procreate when I'm working in Photoshop. Obviously, there's stuff in Procreate that I wish I wish it had that Photoshop had. Um, but I'm quicker with it now, so I've done some concepting with it instead of just taking forever in Photoshop. Um,
Do you feel like Procreate's closer to the like traditional, like feeling like traditional art, and that's why it's like a different avenue than Photoshop because you're using like a physical pen, like even if you're using like a Wacom or like anything like that, does so
uh, no, I'm mirrored, so this is hard. That guy.
yeah, exactly.
um, it does feel quicker. I just like the way the pen works better and like the it reacts to ink better, I guess.
Hmm.
I like the smoothness that Procreate has because I have very shaky hands, I guess. My lines are never straight, as you can
Hmm.
see by this beautiful drawing here.
This
I
little
I
guy
don't
back
I
here.
don't do straight lines uh without wobbles, but
Hmm.
Procreate allows me to have nice little smooth lines.
Swoops and straight
Swoops.
lines and
I just feel like I can be more graphic with it because I can hold it in my hand versus having to like
mhm,
hunch over a Cintiq and
yeah.
draw. Um, at least here at the office, I have an arm for mine, so I can just lay down in my chair and put my Cintiq on my lap and draw there. But uh, don't concept too often.
Do you use too? Does that allow you to do like do you use a Cintiq for like your cave environmental stuff, or is it more for concepting? Like, are you
Um,
physically drawing for that, or?
so for cave stuff, the only I really don't use it for that because it's usually all 3D and the textures are already made. But for like this for everything else, like doing all my texture work, concepting, um, anything that's painting orientated is all in this antique for
Mhm.
work. So tile sets and stuff.
So if you could enroll in 3D environmental stuff into a talent show, what unique skills do you think they would showcase to impress the judges?
Me, if I were to do a
If you're 3D stuff, if you're like environmental stuff, if you're cave in a talent show,
okay,
what would be their unique skill to showcase to the judges?
um, I'm trying to
Okay.
think of a good example. I've got some fun surprise ones. Uh, man, this is hard. Um,
I think yeah, let's like what do you feel makes like one cave stand out over another, or
huh, uh,
like how do you like what would that be that was like this one feels like it would stand above the others because of
well, I would say a shader.
a shader?
Um, we got a new shader a few years ago, uh, that allows us to now blend 4 textures onto our meshes versus 2, which
I was
allows
gonna
a lot
say
more
I
creativity.
I totally know what a shader is, but for
Yes.
anybody else that doesn't, what is a shader?
A shader is uh I'm gonna explain it the way my brain understands it.
Okay.
I am not a technical person. I have my Lala explanations, so whenever I teach people, I'm like, this is how my brain processes it. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's fully accurate, but this is how it works in my head.
Okay.
A shader is just like it's it's a it's a function in the material editor
Okay.
when you're applying your textures into so I use 3D Studio Max,
Hmm.
that does different things. So one shader, because they're working with different aspects of your texture. So like I mentioned with the tree canopy alpha cards, so alpha is used for multiple things besides just making alpha cards.
Okay.
um, you can use it to make glow maps for any of your stuff you want to glow. You can use it for specular maps, which tells you how shiny to make something for
Hmm.
the engine. So you can have like metalness or sheen to some of your crystals or rocks. Um, so there's multiple functions. There's a
Hmm.
ton of shaders, but this one in particular allows us to blend textures similar to how our terrain textures work. Because our terrain textures, you can blend 4 textures at once, which is amazing. But in uh, cave work, you used to only be able to do 2, which was very limiting and was
Hmm.
very hard to not have seams if you wanted to use more textures. So now that we have 4 for this one, it's a game changer. It's a rock star. It's wonderful. I don't
Like
want
a
to go
lot.
back to the old ways.
Is there like a fear that that would be the case? Like is
No,
it okay? So
no,
it's like they're
never going
you're
back.
4, it's never going back to 2 because you can do 4 now.
Yes, yes and no.
Yes
Uh,
and yes.
yes and yes. um, there's certain shaders that our new one doesn't support. So
Hmm.
if we want anything like the metalness map I mentioned, we still have to use our old shader for that.
Okay. So
So
it just doesn't have the capability of doing
yeah,
that
it just
right
does
now?
4 textures, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's still in development essentially. Like they're still adding stuff and I'm kind of there, hey, I want this person. So
Make it work. Make it
yeah,
happen. You're the
yeah,
make it happen lady.
yes. Make it do this
which is
function that I
which
want.
is a challenging thing to do. So like if what project or like what thing did you work on? That's Weasley in the background. He's saying hi to
Sorry.
everyone. Don't apologize. We all love Weasley. You always apologize, and I think it's cute as
He never
hell. But
stops. He talks over
you
everything.
experience him always. We only hear him over the mic occasionally, so I get it. But what would you call, like, what would a challenging project that you worked on that had like an obstacle kind of like that, where it's like you only have this limitation, and like how did you get through that and figure it out?
Um,
Is there any that stand out for you?
challenging projects. Um, um,
Like maybe something that somebody requested that you're like, that's kind of not what we do, but then it's like you have to kind of figure
oh,
out how to do it.
if it's anything like that, I just tell him no. But
Yeah. Well, yeah.
um, uh, I guess the most challenging thing I've done. I mean, there's
Mhm.
a lot.
Yeah.
But this one stands out the most because it was the first time we did anything like this, and we haven't really done it since.
Mhm.
Um, oh boy, just trying to figure out how to explain this. So, um, to make a cave work,
Mhm.
you have to be able to portal off the exterior from the interior. Because if you go through a cave and there's no portal, the game will think you're cheating and kick you out. So you have to like have strategies for portals when it comes to stuff like this. But this is not a cave I did. This was a huge collapsed in like dirt pit that a
Mhm.
bunch of boars lived in. Um, and it had to be all um trying to figure out what to call this because we have a term for it at work.
That is very descriptive.
It's a so if if a mesh is going to use these special shaders, it's called this a particular thing. I'm just going to call it I can't use my work lingo.
Mhm.
I'm just going to call it uh uh super mesh. So when you have super meshes, um they have to be done in a particular way.
Mhm.
And the way we had to set this one up was we still had to have pieces above it, even though it was collapsed inside, and then separate little cave pocket rooms all around the whole area. And it was
Mhm.
all one giant mesh. There was no like just making individual things because what this collapsed in piece was could not be sculpted with our terrain.
Mhm.
So I had to essentially get an exact placement of where they wanted this to be in the engine and get a big copy of that so I can throw it into my Max file and then precisely model out all of this geo to this one spot so that it fit there perfectly to what they were doing. And then our shader that allows the mesh to blend from our model to the terrain seamlessly, I had to match it to all the pieces that were hanging above.
Mhm.
um, so it was just one giant jumble of stuff, and it had a bunch of caves in it, and it was a portal nightmare, but I
If
did it.
so when you're referring to portals,
Yes.
are so you're saying like if I'm playing the game and I go through a threshold, what's actually happening is I'm loading into a
An
cave
interior space.
somewhere else. Not necessarily. Is it always,
No.
well, in your case it's always with that area, or like I know with Lethal Company, all of their interiors are like below the map, so you portal through to that area and it's not part of this environment.
So yes and no.
Okay.
Um, so if you're ever going through like a loading screen or loading area, that's usually you going to another map entirely. So like dungeons would be in
Hmm.
a whole separate section. It wouldn't be attached to the main zone at all. But anything that's like a building or cave that's like once just like a small thing, it's there. It's always
Hmm.
there in the terrain. The portal just allows you to go through it without being kicked off,
Gotcha.
essentially. Um, So anything that's small is always in the zone, but like special situations like dungeons or scenarios, you're usually off in a separate area.
Portaling. Patty, is this a job interview? When I
It
asked that
is.
question, it very much felt like a job interview question.
It is.
I was, as I read it, I was like, this is a job interview question. What challenge did you find and how did you overcome them? Yeah.
So many
So many.
challenges.
A coworker was talking about a challenging thing, or my director was talking to them about a challenging thing today, and she's like, "There you go. If you have that question on interview, now you can say that." And I was like, they'll only get more and bigger from
Yeah.
that point on.
Yeah.
It's usually how it goes. If your lands had their own social media accounts, these fun questions are very specific tonight. What kind of hashtags would they use to describe themselves?
If my what, you only cut out at the very beginning.
Oh, if your landscapes had their own social
Landscapes.
media accounts, what hashtags would they use?
Uh,
The suggested hashtags on this question are hashtag surreal scenery, hashtag pixel perfection, or maybe drama in 3D.
um, uh, that's hard because I don't make the landscapes technically. That's where I
Well,
love
I
with
would
this.
say your like environment or like a cave. You can
I'd probably use the name that my team and I call ourselves, which would probably be hashtag Azeroth Landscapers.
Perfect. Koala has a question too.
Oh.
If there was one thing you didn't have to do at work anymore, what would it be?
Oh, where to begin?
One thing. His
One
question was
thing.
one thing.
There's already one thing I don't like doing, and I avoid it if I can. I haven't had to make it in a long time, so I don't think I'll count that one because I feel like I already don't do it anymore. I already give up one thing. Ooh, as much as I like painting, I could live without doing another tile set ever again. It's not my favorite. I'll do it.
Bean said, I know the answer to this, and it's have to go into the office.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. I would love to never have to go in. Well, I like going in, but I would like to have the option to not go in.
Yes, that would always be beneficial.
Yes. I would say doing tile sets. Just because for me, with ADHD, it is so hard to focus on those because to me they're so boring for my brain. You're just painting a tileable texture, so you could be staring at dirt for 3 days, just painting dirt to make it look like dirt and tile 4 ways and make sure it looks nice, and then do the next one, which is grass, then do the next one, which is rocks, and I'm just like, I want to make something with my hands.
Yeah,
I
not
technically am making something with my hands, but I want to make something I can walk around. I guess you can too. It's this. I'm not explaining this.
So when you say tiling, what you're saying is that like you'll have a square and you'll start to do artwork within that square, but then when it touches an edge, it has to be able to copy
Tile.
over to tile to the next one. So you're like making each edge kind of mirror image of itself or like blend into like a pattern so you can't see that it's tiles.
Correct, more or less. So there's two different ways you can do it. You can do a two-way tileable texture, so it only tiles either horizontally or vertically. We use this a lot with trees, because usually trunks will have a different base texture at the bottom, and when you get near the top, it gets more simplified. We can't really tile that in 4 directions, so we should do it in two. And then a four-way tileable texture is essentially a texture that has to work in all 4 ways, and that's one thing I like about Photoshop that Procreate does not have. I learned that the hard way. Once your stuff moves off the canvas, it deletes itself. Very fun. But with Photoshop, there's a pattern preview function, so it actually will project your square in a pattern all over your monitor, but you can keep painting outside the boundaries of it. So you can actually paint over all of your edges and make sure it's just like one seamless tiling texture, and it allows you to see if it has any areas that are tiling that you don't want to notice, because it's supposed to tile, but you don't want to notice that it's tiling.
Yeah, you want it to be seamless. You want to have a rolling environment.
Yes, without any noticeable repeating patterns.
Mm.
That's usually what we're trying to get rid of with the tiling, is repeating patterns.
So in doing that, would you consider that, like, if you're like optimizing your 3D stuff, considering like performance, stability, capability, like, does that all go into the decisions you make while doing that stuff, like making those things?
Mm-hmm. So depending on what we're making will determine the size of our textures.
Okay.
So if we're making something small, like tiny little blades of grass or pebbles that sit on top of a tile set that you really don't see unless you zoom in, we'll usually make those around 256 by 256 scale. So we're not taking up a lot of texture space, and it's not bogging down the engine, because they're all being repeated everywhere across the whole zone.
And
So
when you're saying 256, is that like a pixel count, or is that a different
yes,
unit?
yes.
Okay.
So when you in Procreate, when you make a square canvas, by default it's 2048 by 2048.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the
Pixels.
highest. Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
usually the highest we go. But those are very rare occasions for like super detailed stuff, because those are very expensive textures.
Like a hero asset or
Yeah.
something that is, yeah.
But I've never made anything a 2048 in my whole
Okay.
time here. So usually we cap out at 1024,
Mm-hmm.
or 512s, depending on what we're making.
Hmm. I like that you have that kind of standard, because like I make email assets and website assets, and I know all of our sizes that our placements are. So it's nice to hear there's a consistency of that across
Yes.
disciplines. It's like, know the blocks that you're supposed to fill, kind of thing.
Well, if you have like a rock that's using an expensive texture and it's all over the everywhere, it's going to be very bogging of the engine.
Yeah.
So,
It makes total sense. And I like the use of expensive. Like, it's taxing
yeah.
to the engine, so it's costly, so it's
Hmm.
expensive.
We actually have
Um
categories when we name our assets based on how expensive they are,
really?
so that our level designers know when they're placing an expensive asset or not. And usually, if they're placing too many of the expensive ones, we have to go, hey, you can't do that.
Your budget, you're losing
Our
your
budget.
budget is
Yep.
so. Oh, I like that.
Hmm.
Um if you design a 3D environment for like a blockbuster comedy movie, what hilarious elements would you include? The suggestions it gives is flying pigs, dancing robots, or perhaps a secret society of mischievous gnomes.
So, um, a blockbuster comedy.
Hmm.
Uh, my first thought goes to small little round plants that look like butts that fart on you if you walk by. Um,
I,
did
I
something
like that.
did
Little
something almost
toots.
very similar in a zone I've worked on, but we had to cut some stuff out. There's still nose hair plants everywhere, which I love. Like, they just look like gross little nose hairs, and gross little strands of sinew because the land's splitting apart. But
Oh, like
anything
a.
that can like fart or make weird sounds at you, or like maybe shoots confetti at you. I don't know, or shoots little
like a
glowing spores.
like a little fart confetti, like, and
Yeah,
it
a little fart
confettis.
confetti. Mm-hmm. And just
That-
shoots down little glittery fart particles all over you.
you talked about collaborating with your team, like working on
Yes.
projects. Um, how do you navigate like communication with your team members? Like concepts between disciplines, like your programmers that you're dealing with. Like, do you have interactions with your engine team, and to ensure it's cohesive and successful? All of these serious questions feel very interviewy, but
Yeah, I'm pretty much being interviewed right now. Yes. On a weekly basis, I am at least talking to, I want to say, at least 2 to 3 other disciplines, depending on What's happening that week. We always have one big meeting for so I oversee one whole project right now. I am the point person for it. So
Mhm.
I assign tasks to artists. I make sure our level designers aren't doing stupid things.
So what would a stupid, like, are you saying like a time wasting thing, or you don't have to completely out yourself with what the stupid things are, but like an
um
example, like something that really gets under your skin that you'd be like, stop doing that.
um when they use assets wrong,
Mhm.
or they take unapproved assets from other zones and put them in mine, which aren't supposed to be there. That's usually I'm like, what is this and why is it here? It's ugly.
Why have you done this?
Um, Sometimes if it's something I don't want to handle myself, I'll just stick my lead on them.
Get them.
Um,
Perfect.
but no, like I collaborate. Like every discipline has their own point person, so I'm always checking in like with some of them. So recently I had to sync up with prop, because I do a lot of cave stuff. I work a lot with dungeon,
Mhm.
because they do similar mesh work that I do. There's just all architecture. I'm always in contact with my world builders and world artists, because they're essentially creating the zone with everything we give them. So we have to make
Mhm.
sure that they're using them right, making nice POIs, making nice transitions,
Point
not using
point
something.
Points of interest.
Points of
Go ahead.
interest,
Go ahead. Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Mhm.
um and just like if they have a suggestion or idea, we talk about it, um to see like what can work to make us both happy if it's something that may be hard to approve.
Mhm.
um it just depends on the project, really, or what I'm doing. Depends on how many people I talk to. I break things a lot, technically, so I often am talking to engineers
So
with
wait,
bug stuff.
by break things, you mean that like assets and things that you've created within your environment stuff break the game engine?
No, me handling our programs, I just am very good at breaking them, which is
Okay.
good, which is
Yeah.
why I'm often put on uh alpha testing for things. They're like,
let's
we need someone to
let's
break things. Let's put you on there.
let's see how you, yeah. So you're the person who finds the
The
issues, that
bugs.
the bugs and like the things that somebody would be like, "Oh, this is perfect. Like there's no problems with it." And you're like,
Yeah.
I've already broken it."
One just came back. I'm so sick of it. This is the
Mhm.
fourth time it's come back. It is the biggest pain in the ass. I can't talk about it, but I hate it so much.
Yeah.
I hate it so much. And I now I have to go back to work on Monday and be like, hey, guess what's back again? You guys need to fix it.
Hey, this is still a problem. Can you guys fix it for me?
Essentially, what this bug is doing is it's not accepting live updates when you locally update an asset you're working on. So you have to
Hmm.
log out every single time you want to apply an update to something you're working on. So log out and back in,
Mm.
which is not fun.
No, I imagine not. So that's pretty
So
much your answer, Koala. Koala said, "Can you tell us?" That was pretty much the answer. It
no.
forces you to log out and log back in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a pretty terrible,
And it's
terrible issue
only
to
when
have.
you're working with
A
super
certain,
meshes,
a super mesh.
which is what I do.
What if I ask nicely? Koala's just spending all of his channel points to ask
No
questions.
koala.
No.
I've had PR training.
So if your 3D creations had the ability to gossip about you, what do you think would be their juiciest rumor?
I don't know if I want this on the internet because it's if it's gonna out me. Um
You don't have to say it then. It's just,
I'm not gonna say
or
what it is, but I
mhm,
have hidden something in
mhm,
every expansion I've worked on. There's something hidden. And
So you-
one thing I've created that's the same thing, consistent, and only my friends know where it is who play the game. And I make sure I hide it every expansion. So that's
It's like
what the
a
rumor would be. The gossip would be the
it's
thing
like
I
a little
did.
that would be the gossip, because you to be clear, you've not done that. That would be the
Nope,
gossip.
nope,
That'd
that's
be the
just gossip.
gossip.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
That's
not
just gossip.
not an
Definitely
actual
nope.
thing that has
Yeah.
happened. You're
A
just
hypothetical gossip.
if they had to make something up, that's what they would make up.
Yes.
To be clear.
Exactly.
It's like kind of like a little signature, like a little graffiti
Mhm.
tag. That makes sense. I like that
A
though.
little Easter egg.
I've definitely never done that to code on the website that I work on or on the emails that I work on. I've never done that.
I believe you.
And it's never been live on our website. What considerations do you take into account when designing environments? This question is asking about virtual reality. Do you feel that would ever be something that your team would have? Because I don't think I've ever heard this, knowing what you do and where you work. I don't think I've ever heard that being a possibility. But like what if
VR?
virtual reality? Yeah, VR.
I know
you
it's
think-
been asked, I think, by fans, and I know we've brought it up just like in talk. I feel like it could be doable. It just might be it's hard because we have so many buttons, and that's kind of like the killer at the end of the day is how would you handle all your buttons. Sometimes I like to pretend I'm in VR mode and I'll zoom all the way in to my character point of view and just run around like that. It's honestly really hard, and I feel like flying on mounts would get you very sick. So
you get nauseous.
I
flying
feel
around.
like it'd have to be a VR experience, not like actually fully implemented. Like if you like say one of the major cities, you can walk around in VR or something.
Do you think it would change like how you're creating things, or would it just be like a perspective difference? Like the FOV or something like that?
If so our game is pretty like your camera's way behind your character, so you're depending on how far you're zoomed out, you
like
can
third
see a
person?
lot. Yeah. So we tend to design things to be seen from far away, more or less. So if it was VR and you were at like ground level looking around, I imagine we'd have to adjust some stuff. Maybe just some like texture fidelity or how things interact with lighting. We might have to do more alpha cards with our trees because they
get more detail into them.
Well, normals. It's the normals. So what normals are is when you have your mesh, the normal information is what's telling the lighting to act with your mesh, essentially. So like if I had a plane, I'd have a normal sticking out boop, like over here because it's on the plane of my face. And if I had a normal here, it'd be pointing down. So it's essentially telling the engine how to light.
Gotcha.
And with canopies, they're usually flat, so they only go in one direction, not the other. So sometimes you'll get bright lighting in a spot that should be shadowed sometimes, or like certain plants, because we'll make them two-sided textures so that it's the same on both sides. But if it's a plant that needs to have a darker butt, essentially, you can't do that because all the normals are pointed up, so it's always going to be bright. So in that situation, what I would do is I would duplicate that mesh and move it just a hairline down so that I have one with normals pointing up and one with normals pointing down. So then I can have a dark side and a bright side, essentially.
I like
So it
that.
would probably be more of that. If it
So
was
it'd be
a
like
VR experience.
rebuilding things so that you can look at it from multiple perspectives, where right
Mhm.
now you have control with that third person view. So
More
it's
or
like
less,
you're never able to be like look under stuff. It's
Well, you
something.
can if you zoom in, but we'd have to do it more, is what I'm
Gotcha.
saying.
That makes sense. Hello, zombie. Hello, shepherd. Hello, Brambo.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello.
If your computer suddenly transformed into a genie, granting you 3D design wishes, what would you wish for?
Anything 3D design?
Or any environmental stuff, like anything that you're doing work related or that you want to do outside.
First wish would be to know every single 3D program, anything about it. So I never have to learn another program ever again.
Like like Matrix style, like it just
Mhm.
like uploads
I
to your
know
brain and then
things.
you know it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So Substance, Blender, all of it.
Oh
All
my
of it
gosh.
would live in here.
Blender would just you'd forget like your first 10 birthdays if Blender just replaced knowledge in your head.
Let me tell you, I tried to teach myself Blender, and you can
It's
tell
work.
an engineer designed this program, not an artist, because they changed
Yep.
every single button. That's
Koala
universal across any other program.
everything. Koala, thank you for the subscription for the tier 1 with the evil faces.
Hey,
So that was one wish.
one.
All 3D knowledge.
Uh, two more 3D questions.
It doesn't have to be 3D. It can be any environmental side. It can be art related, like
Oh,
learning
to
Procreate.
be
Yeah, you can expand out from there. It doesn't have to be.
as an amazing of a painter as my buddy who works with me that I've known since high school. We went to the same art college and high school, so I've gotten to see just his intimidating art the whole time, and it's been
That was the person you shared in Discord the other day with the little environment key. No, somebody else.
no,
Oh boy.
no. He is now our lead of our biz dev department,
Hmm.
so he just concepts everything. Magician. So yes, all the 3D, all the painting,
Mhm.
and then oh man.
Yeah, what would your third thing be?
Yeah, that's really all I need is 3D and painting. Uh um
What if it was like so a discipline that like is completely outside of what you do now, like something that you thought about doing or like you're like that looks cool and it just you have no time presently to do it or you just like it's costly or anything like that. What would your
well, obviously be character stuff, but I would say for to align with what I do, probably do more prop work. Or
what if
have an ability to have more prop work in my stuff.
what if it didn't have to align with what you do? What if it could be anything?
I want to make props.
Yeah.
I want to make little treasure chests and little chairs, like what this culture would make of mailboxes, chairs, and beds and shelves, and just think of a whole culture kit.
I'd like that a lot. Like if a character is a certain thing, like how would pandas approach like a mailbox, or how would koalas approach like a chair? Like if they're hanging on trees, do they need chairs? Like that kind of thing.
I mean, it depends on how they're created, because it's not just going to be a straight up koala in my game. It would be like a some sort of creature or like humanoid type koala. So it would depend on what appendages they have, how they walk, how they move,
Mm-hmm.
uh, how they live,
Crowley said, "Just
what do
hang
they
from
live
the
in.
chair, duh."
Yeah, just hang from the chair.
So you're saying like thinking outside of like the human perspective, but like have the ability to like create a like holistic new thing.
Yeah,
I
something I
like
haven't
that.
gotten to do really that I want to do, and I keep asking if we can have more cross discipline stuff, but no
You
time.
just you just gotta push. You gotta keep
Trying.
be the thorn that
They're
does that.
rushing us more,
I bet.
so I don't have the time.
Koala said, "Make me a little wizard."
A little wizard, I can definitely. Maybe that'll be my next hackathon. Koala, I'll make a little koala wizard.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cute. From what you did last one, like I could imagine you doing like a little fun wizard. Um, how do you you've talked a little bit about environmental storytelling. like what techniques do you use to guide the player's attention, or if you're making an asset or a cave or like an environment, like what do you feel is the most important thing to have them experience that area the way you intend it to be experienced?
Um, so I'm gonna do caves because, like I said,
Go
most of
for
the
it.
other stuff other people do.
This is
Caves,
extremely open-ended.
caves
You can talk about
are
anything you want.
entirely my own.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love them. It's like my
Mm-hmm.
own little play space that's solely mine. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
First would be lighting.
Okay.
So I'd probably have dark lighting as a base, but then strategically put point lights around that help guide the player to where I want them to go. So if like there's an off tunnel that you don't really see if it's too dark, you just place a subtle light there. That's not like a bright one, just enough to call out that there's a hole in that wall that you can go to,
Hmm.
or maybe like a ramp to go up somewhere. Um, so lighting first and then placing assets. So like if I want to frame any spots, I'll tend to put more plants around there and have other areas be less, like more sparse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if it's one that can frame things or it glows, those are the best kind because you just put a little glowing thing there, like, hey, go there. I
It's
want
just
you
like
to
a
go
little
there.
beacon. You're like, there.
Yeah.
Go there.
Um, Sometimes too, it'll just be how you design the cave. So nothing is worse than going really deep into a cave and then you have to walk all the way back through. By then, usually all the mobs have respawned and you have to kill
N-
your way out, and it's just a pain in the ass.
Definitely not calling out Diablo at all.
Hey. um, so uh if it's a big cave like that, finding opportunities to have different ways to get out that are quicker,
Mhm.
especially like if you're in the end chamber, like maybe it's another pathway that leads you out, that's just a little nicer than going all the way back through, or having holes in the ground if it's like a multi-layered cave that players can just like plop through so they don't have to run all the way down. They can just drop down in if they want to and fight whatever's down there and not have to do like all the ramps. um
Like a little sectioned off kind of like
yeah,
sparse thing
yeah, it's
versus
like a hole in the
whole run
ground.
through.
um and just thinking about how players might interact with it. So like one of the ones I've made, it's literally one of the entrances is a giant hole in the ground that if you jump into it you may die, but you can fly into it, so, or you can paraglide down into it, whatever you want to do. So it's just adding
Like
fun little hits like that.
having like mixed ways to like experience the same thing.
Hmm.
I like that.
Same with like
Even
PvP stuff. Like if you have really tight corners, like players can hide around those, like thinking how players might fight inside. It's a lot that you can do, really.
Mhm. uh, I generate these questions on ChatGPT, and I give it like a prompt to do, and just I have serious questions and then fun questions. And for the fun questions, it is off the rails.
Oh boy.
Of if your 3D environments had taste buds, what kind of cuisine would you think they would crave? Obscure. And
Uh,
Chef, you're hiding in the corner. Can I just thank Chef for the follow today? They're a new follower, so thank you,
Hi,
Chef.
Chef. Welcome in.
Welcome in. It's nice to see you. I'm ManyMasks. Normally I would
I'm
wear masks, but
Lala.
I'm not doing that anymore. This is Miss Aurelia, also Lala. Um,
If
so
you didn't know me.
nice to meet them. Who's Chef? Who's the Chef?
Um, Taste buds. Well, I feel like the cuisine they would crave would probably be something soupy so that they can get that
Soupy.
moisture in with their plants because they need that water. So
The-
maybe like some nice ramen, just like spill it all over the ground and just absorb it in and suck the noodles into the earth like
do you
worms.
do you feel like that's part of like when you're designing a cave, like having those like expanses of like no growth, and then like sections of like clearly this is getting more light or water or
Yes, it depends, like I said, on the cave.
Hmm.
Some of them have light pockets, so we can put plants in there, but sometimes the plants we make for that zone do not make sense
Hmm.
to be in a cave, like they wouldn't grow naturally. Um, so then we'd usually use like mushrooms, but if we have textures we can use, like sometimes I'll have areas that are muddy, like a lot of footprints have gone through that spot, um, or maybe it's getting moisture from the drippings of the cave above. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot you can do narratively with the groundwork and the wall work and stuff.
I do love hearing that that's like something that's considered, and I imagine like the arguments of like that wouldn't be in this cave, and then it's just like how do
Mm-hmm.
you either prove that it wouldn't be or counter that it would be, is like a fun adversarial while still being like a friendly kind of conversation. Do you have like that kind of thing happen?
It it depends on your zone point.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, like I'm only in charge of one, and there's other people in charge of the other ones, and if so I've been doing a lot of cave stuff for them,
Hmm.
finishing up stuff for somebody else. Um, and there are areas I have not worked in before, so I'm checking in with them to see what in their kit I can use. And if I feel like there isn't enough for me to work with, then we have that conversation of what can I substitute in.
Hmm.
Sometimes my lead will step into and be like, just use these, and lead overrides everything. So,
Yeah.
um, uh, and sometimes I have a lot to work with. Like the ones I'm doing right now, the kit is massive and I can use all of it. So it's picking and choosing what you want versus putting every egg in the basket,
Hmm.
because then it'll just be a chaotic mess. So
So like
it
sparsity is in some cases better than like I've got this full thing I can use, but like picking in like a light touch.
not so much sparsity, more so don't use all of them
Hmm.
in your arrangement. So like I'll usually pick 3 or
Hmm.
4 of the 15 and just use those in one little arrangement throughout the whole thing. And that'll be
Hmm.
one set. And then if I have to make multiple, then another set I can use other ones I didn't use from the rest of the kit and make that another set. So it's just like making arrangements of different things in different spots, but not using every single thing they give you.
That makes sense. You just like pick and choose, and then like with experience, you're like like when it's probably too much stuff
Yeah,
versus and tone it
yeah.
back.
Can definitely get over heavy handed
Yeah,
sometimes.
just throw too much into it, and then it's just like let's pull it back a little bit. When you're making environments and doing things like that, how do you balance those, especially things where it's just the difference between being visually stunning and then practical considerations that go into like actual gameplay, where it's like you could add a ton of stuff, but then like how does the player experience that area? Is that a consideration that you think about a lot?
Um, yes,
Hmm.
and different areas. So when it comes to constructing and also to placement, um, I don't do the placement, but I still
Hmm.
have input on it. So if I feel like my world builder is not making a space uh cohesive or in a way that is visually appealing, I
Hmm.
can come in and be like, hey, this doesn't look right. You need to adjust things here, add stuff here. Like you need to have the flow better, essentially.
Gotcha.
But when it comes to individual assets, you could have a grand, like huge concept idea of this amazing plant, but you realize it's going to be a nightmare technically. The only way to make it would be a very expensive geo or textures, and you have to kind of figure out how you can pull off the look you want, but also scale it down a bit if you have to. So maybe not all these things you want go into it. Um, or just get very creative on where you use your polygons.
Mm. And that's definitely something that is like an experience thing. Like, do you feel like now, like starting out if you like had something that you're like, this is definitely something big that I need to do you feel like you've now learned like, hey, like maybe it doesn't need to be that big, or maybe it doesn't need to be that detailed, or do you still like push that to be like, I'm trying to do as much as I can?
Oh, for sure, still push it. Like at the end of the day, when you're
Yeah.
concepting, you want really awesome concepts and you want to
Mhm.
pitch really fun ideas. Like, yeah, you still have like simple stuff you pitch, but like any hero assets or like the main showstopper, like
Mhm.
you want those to be um pretty designed,
Mhm.
but sometimes not everything you design will be used. Like some like if it has like these weird little things that poof off the side, but it's going to be a heavily 3D object, maybe you don't need little poofy things. Or if you do, then they're just thin little alpha cards and not actually geo. So like
Hmm.
figuring out what can be alpha versus what can be geo, and when it is geo, where you want to spend those polygons.
Hmm. And geo's like actual geography of
Mm-hmm.
shapes and polygons kind of
Yes,
thing.
so 3D meshes, yeah.
Gotcha. Um, if your 3D environments had their own dating profiles. Oh, before I ask this, if my title was world builder, my name tag would just say God. If you had dating profiles, what would their ideal dating locations and favorite pickup lines be? So, what would your cave's ideal dating location and pickup lines be?
Um, Locations. I feel like my caves would love to live in a very rocky place, so maybe like Scotland or New Zealand, anywhere that they can be
Hmm.
surrounded by rocks and beaches and coasts and anywhere they want to set up shop. Yeah, lots of opportunities. And then you said catchphrases or
Pickup
pickup
lines. What are
lines?
pickup
Pickup
lines?
lines?
Chef just said if
Uh,
I was a cave, I would want you inside me.
um, uh, uh, maybe like, are those boulders in your pants? Or are you just excited to see
Happened to
me?
see this.
You do your makeup today? You're pretty rockin'.
I knew that you were going to have just a few lined up off the cuff.
Are you
That
kidding me? Every week I make rock jokes in my team meetings. You
nice.
gotta, you gotta.
The varying levels of laughter when you
Yeah,
throw a
and
rock
it's
joke.
usually groans.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're doing it for.
Oh, and
That's what you're really looking for
100%,
this, groans. Not the
100%.
laugh. The laughs are extra. The groans are what you feed off of.
Sometimes the room can be a little hard to read and they take it for granted, but at the end of the day, I can still get those jokes across and people get it. Hi,
Take
I
it
make bad
for
jokes.
granted.
For granted.
Um well, we've kind of already talked about this one, is how do you handle feedback revisions during development process? And how has this iterative approach contributed to your quality of your environments?
Talked about this a little bit, but not
Yeah, a little bit.
fully.
Yeah.
So feedback can be taken multiple ways essentially. So
Hmm.
once a week we'll all get together and show off what we did for the week and we'll get feedback from the team. Um, some feedback is like you need to do this feedback, but most of it is suggestive. So like if you're getting a lot of input or ideas thrown at you for what you can do to improve your piece, you can pick and
Hmm.
choose which ones you kind of want to go with that you feel like would help fulfill your vision.
And
Um,
with these meetings, are they cross teams, or is
no,
it just your team?
it's just the environment
Gotcha.
team, yeah. Um, and like I'll have a stand up once a week where I show what my artists have done for my zone with the other disciplines,
Hmm.
but that's usually not a feedback meeting. It's just look what we did. Um,
Look at all this.
so feedback I think is very valuable. Um,
Hmm.
it definitely helps when you have roadblocks, when you're stuck. Like if I can't figure out what I want to do next, I'll just grab somebody and get eyes on it. Giving feedback is also very valuable. Um, it helps you solidify things better in your brain. It also can sometimes give you ideas for stuff that you're making that might be very similar, and it also just helps that artists kind of grow more. When it comes to feedback I don't agree with, um, that one usually comes with a conversation, and it depends on who it's coming from. If it's somebody outside my team, depending on what it is, it's usually a no from me because they're asking
Okay.
for things that they should have asked for a long time ago, or it's too late to do something. Um, Sometimes I'll get my lead involved. Uh, but if it's feedback
Which
I don't agree with, but it's feedback I gotta do,
mhm.
sometimes we'll like have conversations about it and we'll find a way to meet in the middle, essentially.
A compromise. Like
And
you
compromise,
have
yeah.
dialogue that you can
Yeah.
be like, this is why I feel like we shouldn't do this, and they can be like, this is why I think we should,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of like work out that difference.
Exactly.
Do you have times where like something will just come out of left field and like the person asking is not somebody you can say no to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
kind of
It's
the
usually a
hardest.
director level.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
you
I
can't say no.
can't say no to a
It's
director.
it's just usually it's sobbing at my desk a little bit or groaning or just having an internal tantrum, and then you just do your work.
Yeah, and then you just get it done, and
Yep.
that's how it goes. If your landscapes could talk, what do you think they'd complain about the most?
What the fuck are all these people walking on me and shitting on me?
Yeah, the player base is what they'd complain about the most.
Mm-hmm. And the
Yeah.
animals and
Mm.
everything out there that
J-
isn't plant.
the general just environment around them that isn't them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you have a poop quest. Always a poop quest.
There's poop quests.
Yeah.
It's always like collecting poop.
Yeah. All the time. Someone always
In
makes a poop quest.
poop quest, I would if that was my task, I'd be like, poop quest, and then the whole team just poop quest. And oh, that'd be great. I'd be so obnoxious in that office. Could you just the importance of lighting and what techniques do you use for that realistic atmospheric effect?
Ooh, lighting. You know what? I want to change my answer. I'd rather never do lighting again. I'll do
I was
textures.
I was gonna say having like talked to you about like the new lighting stuff that you were doing and like experience with that. So you would not do lighting if you didn't have to do lighting.
Like it's not the worst thing at the end of the day. You're
Mhm.
playing with a bunch of sliders essentially and just picking colors you like and creating the whole gradient from top to bottom of your sky dome, but you're also creating the fog, um and how close it is, how thick it is, how like interacts with your player. Um it's depends on the location.
Mhm.
Um so we usually try to theme it for the area. Um but usually it's up to the point person what they want to do. So I chose the color palette I wanted for my zone, and we had another biome area that
Mhm.
was more forested, so I lighted that towards more like 100-acre wood feeling, like Winnie the Pooh. So it felt more whimsical.
Oh, okay.
It really just depends on what the narrative in the location you're lighting. Um, so like if your area had like a snowy mountain, at the
Mhm.
bottom it'd probably be really, normal weather, but the further up you go,
Be
it'd probably get
foggier.
foggier and snowier, and so
Mhm.
you'd have to create separate lighting just for the transitions going up.
Mm.
So it's lighting's its own beast, but it's got its fun elements and its shitty elements because you're doing a full time of day. So you have to
Yeah.
do it for different timestamps throughout the day, and the lighting
Mm.
changes.
So like a transition
Mm-hmm.
and have it be kind of smooth through those.
Sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight.
Hmm. Um, this question is talking about something. I was gonna change it. Now I forget what I was gonna change it to. Oh, if you could turn any famous landmark into a part of what you do. This says inflatable bounce house, but that's stupid. If part of what you do. What famous landmark would you incorporate into your work that you'd love to see within the game?
Uh,
Because I
uh,
know in asking that you're thinking like what's the narrative, like what importance would it have? Like it's almost like building a whole new area for one specific thing. But if you could do like just like this pinnacle of something that would immediately fit in, you don't have to build the story around it. It could just be like there and
now
you
you're making it harder.
that's
Immediately
harder.
fits in.
No. You don't have to worry about like what the story is or why it's there. It's just like
Okay.
you a structure you would like to put in that has no bearing on anything else. You can just drop it in because you want it to be there.
Uh, uh, mm, shh.
It is not an easy question because I know it's I'd imagine the way like with what you've talked about already, like thinking about like the way the wind moves and the way plants would grow and like how the player would experience this is like, hey, I want you to build a whole expansion around one thing, but like it could be like literally any structure or any like what would be fun to create that if you had no rules around it.
I would probably say I think it'd be fun to do like a post-apocalyptic location. So probably
Hmm.
taking something grand like um maybe like uh, the Golden Gate Bridge, but what that would look like if it had been overtaken by nature or crumbled around it, if there's no
Hmm.
water around it anymore, just what you could do with that, what elements you could build onto it.
And like how you function that into like the style and
Mm-hmm.
everything, like have have something recognizable but then it's just ported.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Like what would grow on it, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, something I could take and destroy, essentially.
Destroy something and then make
Yeah.
it drop in. I like that. um in terms of research, how do you approach like gathering references and studying real world environments, which I kind of got to see this when you
You
visited,
did.
which is a lot of fun. But how do you go about environmental research?
um, Going outside, A.
Hmm. In the
Unfortunately, you gotta go
environment,
outside. I
you're
know, you
saying you
gotta go
have
out
to
into
go
the real
outside for
world.
environment?
Yeah. You kind of got to go outside in nature if you want to draw nature. Um, it's a mix of like photos I take of things I like. If I see outside, I'm like, that's awesome. I want it for my visual library, and I'll just take a picture of it.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of it is Pinterest. I'm on
Yeah.
Pinterest a lot because one thing you're looking up will have 1,000 tangents of more things that you are similar to what you're looking up. So you can
Okay.
just easily grab a ton of those for your reference board. Um, if there's like a theme. So one of the zones I've worked on in the past was a very Art Nouveau shape language. So
Okay.
finding out how we could finding a lot of Art Nouveau reference that we could then translate into plant design, how a plant would grow with a Art Nouveau vibe essentially, or how it would fit that description. So
Okay.
it's a mix of what you find on the internet, also places you know of, in
Mm.
your brain database that you can just reference, like find pictures of. Like there's this amazing temple inside a cave that is so beautiful, and I want to do that. I want to do that someday, and I keep pitching it to put a building inside a cave and have a giant mega cave, but it hasn't happened yet.
It definitely sounds like something that should though. Like
It
that would
should.
be you just walk into a cave and probably have like like a normal entrance and you go down this thing and it just opens to this huge expanse of something.
It should. Uh, but I feel like players do not like caves as much as I do.
Well, they're wrong. You heard it here first. The players are wrong.
I don't know if they're wrong.
They might not be, but if they don't like something new, but that would be really cool to see something just
Yeah.
built within, or like how do you work something that's like structured that way into the environment around it? Like, does it cut out of the wall, or is it
Mm-hmm.
added? Like, do they bring these materials there to make it, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Bunch of narrative you can do, depending on what
yes.
you're doing.
If you were stranded on a desert island and could only bring one piece of 3D software with you, and I'm going to amend that with like you have a computer and all of your other stuff, what would it be and how would you use it to survive? If you could only use one 3D software or one asset on a as a choice, which would you use?
Well, if I already have a computer, I like to assume it's going to already have 3ds Max.
Yeah, is
If
that
it's my
your
computer,
your primary choice?
it is. But if it's a 3D asset, a 3D printer, so then I can just model everything on my computer and print what I need for my island.
That's good. That was a weird question. Especially, it's like it was asking something completely different and just threw 3D into it. Um, how's the evolution of hardware and software in your industry affected your creative process or the level of detail you achieve in your environmental designs?
Hmm.
So you've been there for a few years. Do you feel like what you were doing when you first started has evolved because of your like your ability to have a four channel shader? Is that what it would be? Would it be channels?
This
But
is a small element of things that have happened in the
okay,
6.5 years I've been here.
yeah,
Yes.
hmm
Our So we have a mix of tools and programs. Obviously, I use 3ds Max and Photoshop, but we have our own technical team that makes us specific things for our programs that aren't
okay,
available to the public. So they're always making stuff for us that has definitely eased our life and workflow and how we do things. They've also made a brand new program that we do everything in. That is my favorite thing now ever. Uh,
that's
I
awesome.
was I was the guinea pig for that. So I got to
Oh,
troubleshoot and tell every technical person what our team needs exactly to make this wonderful. Um, yeah,
that's
it's
pretty
definitely
awesome.
yeah, it's definitely changed. Because we always have a dedicated team that is trying to evolve our pipeline and our technical stuff. So it's there's always something new every year that makes our life a little easier.
That's awesome though that you have that within the team, so you're not like
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the industry to come out with new stuff. You guys are generating stuff to then
Yep.
help you, and the input that you got to give affecting the greater bit of it is really cool to have that input
Yeah.
sculpted by Lala.
I'm doing things.
I'm doing things. Um, what considerations do you take into account when designing environments for different genres? You kind of have like the same. So, although there's like an overarching stylistic spec to what you do, I feel like it definitely like you have certain things that are changing, or like every new thing that comes out is like an addition to like, so how do you approach the creation of those things?
Mhm. Uh,
Does it
Genre.
go into like that research of like having that database and like that built up knowledge of things you would like to see, and then kind of working them into um like how it would fit within something new?
Um, that can be hard sometimes because some stuff we've worked on we don't go back to ever again. So there's kind of like one-offs, and they're just they exist in that expansion, and you never see them again.
Hmm
So there's no real narrative to carry forward, but usually we'll have a narrative. We always
hmm
have our narrative team that are pretty much planning everything from the get-go, and we're told what the narrative is and if there's any continuation from previous stuff we've done,
hmm
um, and what elements of the previous stuff that they want to include from it. But usually what we're doing is new. regardless. Like it's a new location, new spot. Sometimes it'll be an old reused location. Like the first thing I worked on was updating a very old location
Mhm.
and making it look brand new, which was a lot of fun. It's like I was painting on history. Uh,
I like that a lot, especially
yeah.
like knowing your enjoyment of the game and then like being able to create for the game. Like
Mhm.
that's really cool. Painting on history.
Painting on history. It feels weird. Like I'm recreating the stepping stones that was this game when it first came out and making it look more up to date to our painting standards.
That's awesome though. It's probably is a I imagine a surreal experience. I don't have anything
Hmm.
to like correlate to that, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. As being a brand new baby artist, hell yeah. Like the first few tasks of me working there, it was mind blowing to me that I was doing that. I'm like, really? You want me?
To
All
do,
right.
all right, I guess I'll do
Let's do
this.
it. Yeah.
That's great
Um,
though.
but yeah, we usually have a full narrative. So we already know
Mhm,
like the vibe and like depending on the zone as well, like it can change like your style.
mhm,
Um, yeah, we tend to strive towards stylized realism,
mhm.
but some zones will push more into the realism and some will push more into the stylized. So it changes depending on the theme, also which artist is working on it. Yes, we all kind of make the same art
Mhm.
for the game, but you can tell
Oh.
who worked on what
Mhm.
because um everyone has their own signature, if that makes sense. Everyone has their own
The
way they
hand,
paint.
the hand of the artist is how
Yes.
it's. Yeah.
Yes. I never thought I had a style. Like everyone's like, what's your everyone's always like, I want a style. I want a style. I'm like, everyone has it. You already have a style that's your own. It
Mhm.
does adapt over time depending on who you find inspiration from or who you hang around with.
Mhm.
Like their art can influence yours, but everyone already has a style. And I used to think I didn't have one until I started like looking at my personal art comparing to my work art, and I would see my same line strokes in
Mhm.
both. I'm like, oh, there it is.
That's something that comes up a lot on here, of course, because talking to like artists and is like concern with a style or concern with
Mm-hmm.
like I need to find that when like you just do you and
Yeah.
it'll come out.
Yep. Find an
Yep.
artist you like their style of and start trying to incorporate that into yours. And over time, your style will go the way you want it to go. Just takes studying of that person's art or similar art of it and practice.
And like you said, it'll happen and you won't even realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just be
Mm-hmm.
something. So don't chase it.
Yeah.
Like let it happen kind of thing.
Art's a muscle. You gotta work it out.
To get it to function. If your computer suddenly gained self-awareness, this really likes awake computers right now.
Yeah.
Um and started critiquing your environmental designs, what do you think it would say? Would it say more trees or less rivers? That's what it
I would probably say, why are you doing so many caves? Go back to making plants. You haven't made a plant in a year.
Vegetation. Why no vegetation?
I will be making plants soon, I think. Finally.
That's good. Actually thrown some plants.
Yeah. I'm getting a
Mm.
break from being a point person and get to
Ah,
create. Because
get
when you
to
become a
make
point
stuff.
person, you don't make as much anymore. You're overseeing.
I've talked to my art director about this a lot, where it's like in art and in especially like the corporate art is like you move up, and as you move up you do less and less and
Mm-hmm.
less art, and it's like this weird
Mm-hmm.
duality. Hello Jam, how are you? um you like work yourself out of doing art, but then also you have the opportunity to share and teach, and like
Yes.
that could be fulfilling in its own way.
Depends on the person. Yes. I was headed towards leadership last year. I
Mhm,
was getting trained for 6 months to head into a lead position, but it was very hard to know I'd be giving up art um
mhm.
entirely. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
doing any more art for the game. I would just be in meetings and guiding and directing the rest of my team. Uh, it's why I started picking up more of my personal art so I could still have the art outlet. But it ended up not happening. And I'm kind of glad at this point it didn't happen, because at this point, if you ask me if I want to be lead, the answer is going to be hell no.
Hypothetically, that's not on the record. That's hypothetical. Because you never know
Hypothetical.
what opportunities could
Hypothetical.
come. Yeah.
Well, I will say this, even my art director came to me and was like, he didn't want me to be lumped in a lead position because my growth at the company would stop, and he doesn't want that to stop yet.
No.
So
That's a good. I think too in like their position, it's hard to like tell somebody that, because it feels like it's a good thing. I'm sure they went about it a way that like you felt like it was a good thing, because
oh
it's still
yeah, no,
growth and still
I can't
creation.
say more,
Yeah, of
but
course.
yes, it was a very good conversation we had.
Yeah. Because I mean, it doesn't always have to be growth into leadership, because you're learning stuff and doing stuff and creating new
Correct.
stuff, which is
Correct.
always good.
Artistically growth, not
Yes.
position growth.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that realistically gives you more anyway, because you have the option to do more, create more, jump around, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Can you discuss your approach to creating seamless transitions between different environments? You kind of touched on this a little bit with like the portal stuff, to ensure smooth and immersive player experience. How does that feel? Because I feel like if you like segmented caves onto their own thing, you still have that like transitional space between your out environment and your interior environment.
Yeah, well, the exterior stuff, we really don't do much. Like, this is more of a question if I was a level designer, because
Okay.
they build things. They build the zone. I just build the things that go in it.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good explanation of like the difference between like
Yeah.
what you do and like what's, because having like no knowledge of that on my end of like where that line is between things.
Yeah, that is the team we work closely with, like the most close with. We're always the first two in a project together. But it seamless transitions, it depends on, I guess, the type of cave, because I've had one that's like a coastal cave, and it's had a giant like archways, like multiple, essentially five holes for the entrance that lead into the
that's a lot of
interior.
that's a lot of holes.
That each one needs a portal. But you can only build one at a time, and if it sees other holes, it gets angry, so you have to like strategically cut a duplicate mesh out and make a portal for each hole, and then it sits right there and it doesn't make the machine angry.
So not only are you figuring out how to make this environmentally work and like and storyline work, you also have to fight with your
The
game
limits of our tech.
engine
Yes.
to be like, this is fine, you're okay with this.
Yes. There's a reason why I have written an entire Wikipedia page within my company about the process of cave making, because it's one giant beast that is probably the hardest thing we do, and a lot can break.
And you usually find the way to break it.
Yes, or that's why there's the Wikipedia page, because I have found the way that it breaks for everything. And so I usually have a checklist of things we go down when someone comes to me like, hey, this isn't working. I'm like, all right, try this. Is this on? Do you have this on? Is this linked to this? Check your chunk. Like, it's
a full on, which is good to have that like taxonomy and like history, so that people know what the hell is going on or can fix it.
If they actually read it, though.
No. Wait, you expect people to read? Who can read? Who reads?
Hey, it's there for a reason. I give the 2-hour cave talk, and then the Wikipedia page is there for any refreshers. But nope, I still get bombarded with questions.
Welcome to my TEDx talk on caves.
Oh yeah, it's recorded now. we recorded it on the very last one. I gave the 2-hour cave talk to 13 other artists each.
I like it.
Fun.
Loki didn't pay for this question, so I'm not going to read it. If you were to create a 3D world for a team of quirky cartoon characters, what kind of challenges would they face? Pixelated rainstorms, disappearing platforms, maybe just an endless maze of confusing menus. I like that these gave suggestions on every single one of these questions.
Cartoon characters.
Yeah, so if you could do something like completely different style, like what quirky cartoon? All right, now I have to ask Loki's question because he paid in bits when I meant pay the channel points and not actual money. What is funnier, pee pee or poo poo?
Poo poo, obviously.
I like that you paid actual money for that question, Loki. Thank you very much.
And
So,
if you want to spice it up, you do pee pee poo poo.
Pee pee poo poo. All together. Just together. Quirky
Okay.
character environment.
Quirky character.
I'm drunk, it was worth it.
Well, the first thing that would pop to my head is a style, or it's like a type of game I haven't worked on, which would be like a 2.5D platformer. So like the side-scrolling ones, like more like Sonic,
Okay.
but it's 2.5D, so you actually have 3D depth to it. So like backgrounds, like more like the Kirby style almost, or Super Mario.
Like an isometric
No,
style game.
no, isometric would be
Okay.
more Diablo.
Gotcha.
So it's like a side scroller. So like
Mhm.
platformers, like
Yeah,
Mario jumping along, but it's 2.5D. So instead of flat little pixels,
you still have like a.
you
It
still have
feels.
3D. Yeah.
Yeah. Your background's moving at a different speed than
Yes.
your foreground. Gotcha.
There's still like 3D information stuff going on, so I
Mhm.
still have something to do. So I'd probably do that, and then probably have, I don't know, I want to make a food land. I really want to make food. I think that'd be so much fun to make a bunch of 3D foods.
Mhm.
So probably similar to Wreck-It Ralph, I guess, the little candy land, but like a food land. It's a side scroller, but there's things probably like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs are probably gonna eat you.
That's great.
So like food that wants to eat you like pops up like the piranha plants, throws shit at you.
Falling from the sky, like
Yeah.
everything attacking.
Yeah. By the way, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is so wonderful.
I am aware that is one of your favorite movies.
Yes, number
Yeah.
2 is the best when they go to the island with all the foodimals.
I haven't seen it in a hot minute.
It's so great.
I just occurred to me that I still have 2 clips, so let's see what this one clip is.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, God, you scared me! God, you scared me! Oh, jump scare.
It's the jump scare.
That
So
sounds
you're-
so real.
I would say a fan of scary things. If you could incorporate that more, what kind of things would you put in that would
Like
fall into that? Like horror,
horror
spooky,
stuff?
horror,
Ooh.
spooky.
There's a bunch of stuff I would love to do, but I'm usually told no because there's a lot of phobias in our player base and we have to keep
Fair.
in mind for that.
Yeah.
But I wanted for Zono's design helping concept for, I wanted did you ever see the Peter Jackson King Kong?
Is that one of the newer ones?
No.
Not the black and white one, but the one after the black and white
No.
one.
Yeah, it had Jack Black in it and
Yes.
Adrian Brody.
Yeah, Adrian Brody. Yeah.
So the scene where they're down in that huge crevice and all those giant bugs come out and start eating people, I really wanted to do something similar to that, like a spooky area, but have like trapdoor spiders. So like when you're walking around, like it looks like little roots of a tree, but it's actually a spider that'll grab you if you go by. Gross little things that come out of the wall. That part of horror I think would be easy to pull off and do, but definitely spooky bug stuff.
Spooky. I like that. Am I able to actually? I found the scene real quick here. Something
Oh,
went wrong. Please retry.
really? You're
I
gonna
don't
play
think
it.
I don't think it'll cast. Yeah, it doesn't want to cast.
That's
So
okay.
so a spooky bug scene.
Yeah, definitely
Okay.
like because we used to have like these dirt mounds that could have easily been turned into trapdoor spider stuff.
Oh.
Wanted it so bad. I pitched it and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I feel like spiders is like one of the big ones on the list of like
Mm-hmm.
no thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If your
Yeah.
computer mouse had a mind of its own, I don't it's concerning to me that so many of these AI questions are
Are
about
sentient.
computers coming to life. I
Yeah.
do not I do not like that aspect of these questions.
We need John Connor.
Do you what do you think it would say during your most intense sculpting or creation sessions?
Mm. Why are you pressing so hard?
why why do you keep pushing so hard?
Why are you pushing so hard? I definitely don't have a death grip when I'm super focused. I definitely have not broken pens by gripping them too hard that they snap in half. Nope.
Broken pens?
I've broken pens,
Broken
yeah.
pens? Oh boy.
Um, I don't know, probably the amount of clicking I do on them because I definitely don't hotkey as much as I probably should. Uh, I'm very much a hands-on person. I don't like too many buttons, so I definitely do a lot of things manually. A lot more clicking. So they'll probably be like, "Why aren't you using more hotkeys?
Use more hotkeys.
Use more hotkeys."
Crowley says ChatGPT yearns for sentience. Yes.
Apparently, it really
Very
wants
clearly.
my computer to come alive. Apparently, and talk
Does
to me.
does anybody else in the chat have any questions for a professional environmental artist? They have right here that has worked in games and does a bunch of game stuff. Zero, hello, how are you? Game stuff.
For
Any
six and a
questions?
half years.
6.5. Yeah, I have a question. Chef has a question. Oh boy.
What's
Strap
your
in.
question, Chefy?
Strap in and strap on. Chef's got a question.
I'm ready.
Zero, hello, how are you? First time chatter, long time listener. What's your favorite cheese?
What's my favorite cheese? I love me some smoked Gouda.
Smoked Gouda.
It's very Gouda.
It's very Gouda.
Hero night, folks. Got the jokes.
So I kind of threw out that you were looking to do like critique stuff for like people that are looking to get into the game industry or are working towards that or doing stuff. Is that something that you're looking to do recent or in the very near future, or is it kind of like an eventual goal? I feel like I kind of outed you on that and you definitely didn't talk about it before, but
It was definitely supposed to be a surprise, but we can talk about
oh,
it.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. Oh.
I don't have a date for when it's gonna happen because I have to start streaming again, which I've been very not
Mhm.
streaming. I haven't streamed since Halloween. Um,
Exclamation point Lala and give Lala a follow right now so
no,
that there's
you're
everybody can talk
fine. You're
and
fine. I didn't need to.
yes.
I just stream when I can, which is usually when I'm not burnt out from work.
Hmm. Understandable.
Um, but no, I'm trying to once I get my Mondays and Wednesdays back,
Hmm.
that's what's killed my streaming, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, once I get those back, I want to start finding a more consistent streaming schedule.
Hmm.
Um, and something I was thinking of doing, because like I do a mix of games and art. Mostly games, because I do art all the time. So if I'm going to stream something, it's probably a game. But, or a Cody prompt, depending on
Mm,
what the mood strikes. But I was thinking of having like once a month, if people were interested, having a like an area in my Discord where people can post work in progress art or art that they're working on that they possibly may want feedback on for like a specific direction or something specific they want help with. Um, I will never actively like backseat art anybody in their streams,
hmm
ever. Everyone does their own art, has their own style. Everyone's amazing. But if people want feedback ever or want, eyes on something, that is something I have done for a long time. I have taught many people. I have mentored many people. Um, uh, Feedback at the end of the day is never meant to be harsh. It's never meant to be mean. It's supposed to be
Constructive.
constructive. It's supposed to just be like, here's what I think you should do if you want. Like, obviously, everyone will probably have a different approach to things. So this would always be my view of things. But
hmm
like I said earlier, feedback is you take what you want from it. So I
hmm
could give you all this feedback and you could be like, nah, that's fine. But yeah, that's something I'm thinking of doing if people are interested, if there's ever anyone who wants eyes on their art or wants to possibly talk 3D. I need to start doing 3D on stream.
You should. You
I
should do
should.
3D on stream.
I should. I just need to
Even
get
if,
that indie license of Max and just start doing it.
yeah. I didn't mean to break that
That's
surprise.
okay.
I was just very excited for I feel like that's initially what I was trying to do, like with design stuff on here, and just like get back into like I work professionally, you work professionally, like have input, and like this is not something I ever got. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
about you like in school, but like I didn't get I got a semi-professional view, but it was like a freelance, not like a big company.
Uh, I got plenty. Most of my
Yeah.
teachers were already in the industry,
hmm
and we would have guests from the industry come in and look at our art. So
That's pretty cool.
I had a plethora.
Even
um,
when I went to school in New York, like my teachers worked at like big industry stuff and like they just didn't tell us shit. So,
One of my old teachers worked on the new Spider-Man that everyone loves.
that's awesome.
And
The Spider-Verse.
and he used to do a lot of animations for like the Batman show and Joker and all that stuff. He was really cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Lots of fun people.
Zero also didn't pay for this, but I'm not going to make anybody else pay bits. I just meant channel points. If you had to choose one type of apple to eat from now on, what would it be?
Pink ladies
I was gonna say it's got to be Pink Lady. Come on, they're
or
amazing.
opal apples.
Opal apples. I
Hmm.
don't know that one. Live in Washington. Have no idea what that apple is.
They're bright yellow. They're
Bright
not as
yellow.
sweet as pink ladies, but they're the type of apple that you can't grow or you could get sued. It's one of those. Yeah.
GMO.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that
So
answer.
pink
All right,
ladies.
thanks, Zero. I'll take
I'm
you.
glad you like my answer.
Yeah. Uh, Send it to the bank. Do you have anything else that you're working on, that you plan on working on, that you're doing, that you want to talk about, that isn't me
Um,
ruining surprises?
you're fine. You're fine. Like I said, I've been thinking about that for a year and I haven't started it yet, obviously. I need to
Mhm.
get going with streaming more if I want to do that. Currently not working on anything right now, but I'm about to start. So my team at work has started to want to do painting practice outside of work. So we're doing material study cubes. So what that means is we're making a cube and we're picking a material or a texture and we're making it look like that in our own style.
Mm.
So I'm doing stylized. I don't know if I'd say realism. My first one wasn't realism. It was just more stylized, but I just finished a moss cube and we
Mhm.
just got our next one, which will be shell. So I'm probably going to start blocking out what my shell cube is going to look like. So I'm hoping I can possibly stream some of it, because it's very different than my personal art I've streamed before, because this is more aligned with what I do for work. So it's very more painting. More painting, less cartoons and lines.
I think you should stream it just because it'll be an interesting. To me at least, would be interesting to hear like your input while you're working on stuff and like why you're doing. Because I am fuck awful with lighting. I do not anything I do is flat. There's not shadow. It's just like color. Like screen printing, block printing is like my basic art style. So to hear like why you're making the choices of light or how you're seeing the effect of the direction versus the shadow is not something I'm well versed in. So it would be probably behoove me to hear how that works. So yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I won't say I'm an expert on it, because let me tell you, lighting is what I still struggle with, and that's why I'm excited we're doing these studies.
I the lighting that you did on that moss cube, because you did it in Discord, we watched you draw it, is immaculate and nowhere close to what I can do. So you might not be an expert, but you're infinitely higher than where I'm at with it. So I feel like your input would be extremely useful.
I just don't know if I would explain things well, but I would explain things the way I understand them, which is how I explain most things in my life. My
Well, I mean,
brain.
yeah, that's how anybody explains things, though, is
Yes.
your own description.
But there's usually a precise technical way, and
Technical,
but,
schmechnical.
I
It
mean,
doesn't.
I don't know if the moss would have been a fun stream, because it was a lot of me just doing fine little strokes of fuzz.
I feel like it becomes one of
essentially.
those things where you like talk about other stuff or like talk about
True.
process of things while you're still
True.
like kind of working on it. So
Well, I
it
feel like
would
the
still
show
be.
will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Do you have anybody on right now that we should raid? I have a few people. Does anybody else have any questions before we go?
I mean, you know who I'm gonna say.
Miss
It's where I'm gonna
Ray.
go after this.
It's up to you on where we go. So that could totally be fun. I do have one other clip. I can't pause my music for some reason. Let's do this so I don't have to walk off screen real quick to pause Coheed and the Suffering. Let's see what I don't even
I forgot
remember.
you had this also playing.
I
I
did
can't hear any of it. Or
the entire time.
Couple.
No. Totally fair.
Thank you for pooping in my hands.
Thank you for pooping in my hands.
Thank
Perfect.
you for pooping in my hands.
I appreciate everyone for coming out and being here. And I switched off while Lala was waving. But I'm gonna try to get back to these once a month. I'm very thankful for Lala for being the first on my rusty attempt back at this. So, who are we rating?
Obviously Ben Monster.
Obviously, Ben
Where
Monster.
else would we go?
Of course. I'll definitely have to bother them about being a guest on the next one or next one down the line. Try to get all three of them on at once. It'll be an interesting interesting endeavor in itself. So let's go back. Were there any other questions? Your freedom.
Thank you everybody for stopping by. I
Chef
hope
says,
this was interesting to learn about.
Of
What
course
environment
it was.
artists do.
Yes, exactly. Let me find the chat menu here. Oh, another loudness. Monday and Tuesday will be Butt Fest on Celestial Beans channel. If you're not already following, you should do that. Do that. Follow the bean for Butt Fest. It's gonna be a rootin' tootin' farty time.
Beautiful time.
And Bean puts so much work into it, and it is a crazy amount of stuff, and it's definitely worth seeing. Celestial Bean art. Crowley, if you could do a shout out if you're still here, I'd super appreciate Celestial Bean right there hiding with the little guy. Submitted to Butts Fest. Loki's in there. If you do art, you still have time to put something into Butts Fest. So you should do that.
The deadline's tomorrow.
The deadline's tomorrow. You got time. You can draw a butt by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm recording my video tomorrow. Chef's doing a video for it.
Ooh.
Definitely.
I can't wait to see everybody's submissions. I'm so excited.
Right?
So many people are submitting this year.
It's gonna be great. Oh my gosh, my computer is so unhappy with the load right now. Chugging along. Look, you're on this credits.
I'm on
You're
the small screen. I'm in
on
a
the
screen
little
within
screen.
a screen.
I appreciate everyone for coming out. I'm gonna try to do this raid real quick. Diamante XL did my opening stuff, and Fiorni was the other person in the car. I can hear myself. What?
I'm on the TV.
Oh my gosh, my computer's running so slow. We're gonna head over to Ben Monster.
Athena's on Doodle Foolin'.
And the raid call is gonna be Lala pooped in my hand.
Great. I'll just say I pooped in your hands.
Appreciate you all. Thank you for coming out. Don't forget that you are important. I'll be back Tuesday for La Machine, so it's kind of serendipitous that we're raiding the Ben Monster. So, Lala pooped in my hands. Thank you again, Lala, for coming on.
Thanks for
I appreciate
having
you,
me.
of course.
Bye,
All right,
everybody.
bye.
Wait, nope. There. Mirror. We did it.